Las Vegas. A city made of light and promise, neon signs that never sleep, fountains that choreograph dreams, slot machines that jingle like prayer. A place people go to gamble with fortune, with fate, and sometimes with truth. But what if I told you that beneath the glitter and the gloss, beneath the pavement and the strip, something older, stranger, and far more patient than any human gambler has been waiting? This is the story that began unexpectedly, with a shaky handheld video recorded by a man who'd already earned a reputation among the internet's fevered margins, a man who claimed to have found an organism in a meteorite in Panama. His name circulated quietly among forums and comment threads. He'd been mocked, threatened, and silenced before, yet when he posted again from Las Vegas, his voice trembled in a way that made mockery feel impossible. The footage opens like so many other viral clips: poor light, a camera that shakes, a city skyline bleeding stars in the background. But the camera is not looking at the skyline. It looks down, and into a fissure in the earth. There, in the asphalt's crack, something black and viscous moves. At first it looks like tar, like oil, but it is not inert. It pulses. It ripples as if with intention. A tendril, not long, not slender, but slick and deliberate, slides over the concrete edge and then withdraws, tasting the air. "Do you see this?" the man whispers, breath loud against the microphone. It's the same thing from Panama. But this one's bigger. It's the kind of line that gets repeated in comment threads, the hook that turns curiosity into dread. The camera's proximity makes texture visible, a gloss like wet obsidian under a street lamp, a surface that seems to drink the light and hold it. The mass moves when the light hits it, contracts when his voice trembles. In one moment of horrifying clarity, it lashes a tendril across the pavement with a sound like wet leather snapping against stone. He stumbles back. "It knows I'm here," he breathes. When the video hit the internet that night, something immediate and ugly happened. People split. Some called it a masterful hoax. Others saw a pattern they could not unsee. The man's backstory complicated everything. Weeks earlier, he had posted footage from Panama, images of a meteorite and an organism like black glass, coiled and alive. He said he'd left under threats. Now, it seemed to have followed. There are few places where rumor finds traction faster than Las Vegas. Proximity to the clandestine installations of the Nevada desert, a culture that thrives on spectacle, and a city's willingness to sell the extraordinary as part of its brand. These all made Las Vegas fertile ground for this story. But the man's suggestion was darker than mere coincidence. What if the entity had not arrived from the sky, but had been waiting beneath our feet? What if the meteorite in Panama had been only an invitation, or perhaps a beacon? The second half of the first video escalates the dread. He returns with a flashlight. The fissure is wider now, the black mass more active. When the beam hits it, the organism withdraws, reconfigures, as if embarrassed by exposure. When he speaks, it accelerates. In a blasphemous moment, a vaguely humanoid outline rises, a shadow pretending to be a body, two glints like eyes reflecting light, a suggestion of intent. It stands, or attempts to. Then it collapses back into the pool as though taking a step it cannot complete. That clip spread like wildfire. TikTok loops, Reddit threads, YouTube re-uploads. Skeptics sharpened their knives. CGI, practical effects, clever editing. Supporters dug through the comments in the man's past, finding threads that hinted at intimidation, that suggested he'd been told to stop. One comment summed up the tone. They warned him in Panama. He kept looking. Now they're here. But for all the shouting online, something else happened off-platform that we would come to track with growing unease. Clips disappeared. Accounts that reposted the footage went silent. Links were scrubbed. The videos would be taken down only to reappear in other corners of the web, in anonymous forums and dark caches. The internet, usually a leviathan that loves to hoard everything, began to look like a sieve. Digital forensic types stepped in. A sound engineer ran the low hum captured in the background through analysis software. What casual listeners called static, the engineer found, contained structure. repeating frequencies and rhythmic patterns more like a code than noise. A geologist who agreed to speak off the record used the term self-organizing nanostructures. A biologist who asked to remain anonymous said, quietly, that the organism's behaviors resembled neural responses more than chemical reactions. None of the experts were comfortable saying anything on the record. Some refused completely. Then, as days slipped into weeks, a second video surfaced. This one was anonymous, 2 minutes long. No voiceover, no commentary. The camera trembled, and then found again that shifting pool. As the lens drew nearer, geometry began to appear on the surface, lines forming and dissolving in impossible symmetry, patterns that suggested circuitry or a language. In one slowed frame, a shape swelled and then blinked, like an eye. The clip cut out, the camera falling, as though the person filming had dropped it in fear. The fear spread beyond comments and theories. Residents began reporting unnatural phenomena, vibrations in the ground, dogs trained to ignore storms suddenly reacting to empty alleyways, blue light seen under manhole covers in the dead of night. Footage surfaced of a dashcam capturing a pale figure crossing an empty desert highway in 3 impossible strides, flickering like a damaged broadcast. The clip was flagged. The uploader's account vanished. Whispers started about black vans, unmarked helicopters, low-flying drones surveying empty lots at hours when human logic says they'd be grounded. And then, weeks after the first clip, the man who started it all posted again. His face was a map of exhaustion. He spoke like someone who had been stripped of sleep and certainty. "They told me not to talk," he said. "They told me this would end if I stayed quiet. But it hasn't. It's getting worse. Every night it gets closer. Every night it learns more. I've tried to move. I've tried to hide. It follows." He leaned forward, voice halved into a whisper meant only for a microphone and an invisible audience. "It's not just an entity," he said. "It's a signal, a message, and we've already answered." That line, that accusation, changed the debate. Until then, we argued about origin, motive, and mechanics. But suggesting that the act of watching, of sharing, of giving attention, had answered a call turned spectators into participants. If observing could be an invitation, then every re-upload, every alarmist thread, every fact-check was another way to amplify whatever signal the organism used. The very platform that had given him the power to warn also gave the organism the power to spread. After that video, reports escalated. Teenagers playing late-night football described a figure standing at the edge of the field, while floodlights stuttered and died. Casino workers reported being trapped in basement rooms they swore should have had functioning doors. One man described scorch marks on walls where a shadow had been. A live streamer walking the desert outskirts captured something up close, thin, towering, with limb proportions that defied anatomy, eyes glowing like distant white coals. The streamed image melted into static, but analysts later found, when they slowed the feed and enhanced it, repeating geometric motifs embedded within the distortions, as if the scramble itself contained instruction. A pattern began to emerge from the chaos. The entity, or entities, did not behave like animals. They behaved like instruments. Sometimes they probed, sometimes they watched. They seemed to learn from engagement. They responded to light and sound, to the way a camera panned, to the breath of a human voice. Some theorists proposed a chilling explanation. These were not independent creatures but scouts, living probes designed to map and understand, to test the reflexes of a society wired to react to images. And then the world changed in a single night. It was a small ordinary hour, 2:17 a.m., time-stamped on devices across Nevada. Screens across living rooms and hotel lobbies flickered. Streaming services froze. Television sets, even those not tuned to any channel, went black. From the static rose an image. At first it was only a field of broken pixels. Then the figure took shape. Not one organism, but hundreds. Rows upon rows of tall, skeletal silhouettes stood in impossible formations. Their eyes, cold, luminous pinpricks, pierced the television static. Behind them, a landscape not like ours shimmered. fractured planes of light and geometry moving with a logic that broke perspective. It wasn't a speech. No words spoke. But the resonance was an announcement. It threaded through bone and glass, vibrating with a layered tone that seemed to transmit meaning directly into the body. Viewers described an immediate comprehension, not with language, but with a clarity that felt like translation. The message was simple and immutable. We are here. We have always been here. Governments denied involvement. Broadcast networks scrubbed their feeds. But the images had already escaped into the world through pearled screens and sleep-addled eyes. Panic followed like a physical thing. Highways clogged. Grocery stores emptied. People took what they could and fled. Militias formed in parking lots. At the edges of civilization, the phenomena spread like a rumor finding architecture. Pilots reported luminous shapes outside flight paths. Farmers spoke of livestock disappearing, leaving scorched patterns in the earth in near-perfect rings. Urban neighborhoods found their security footage corrupted at the moments that figures appeared. The narratives that make up the human response to the unknown began to match one another. The entities harvest energy. The entities are interdimensional. The government has known and kept it secret. Some of these are typical. Others are newer and stranger. Accounts of walls of static humming when touched, emptied houses with scorch marks on the floors, children waking to find shadow figures standing at the foot of their beds. One viral live stream, still circulating in fragments, shows a family on a couch, blue light spilling through the blinds. Their children cry. The feed tilts. A tall figure stands still behind them like a statue. The stream cuts. The uploader wakes to find the account deleted. Through it all, people kept circling back to the man who had started it. Some believed he was dead. Others insisted he had been taken, that his warnings were a sacrifice made to reveal a larger truth. Weeks later, when hope had thinned into rumor, a new clip appeared from an anonymous account. It showed him alive, but hollowed out. He sat in a room with concrete walls, the kind of place a person goes when they cannot sleep. His eyes were rimmed red. He looked like someone who had been taught to speak through a filter of coercion. "You think you're watching them?" he whispered into the camera. "No. They're watching you. Every click, every view, every glance. It feeds them. Permission. We gave them permission." He spoke of learning, of the way the organism adapted to light and tone, to the cadence of human speech. He said something else that turned discussion into hysteria. "They're inside. Inside the systems. Inside the signals. Inside us." His voice faltered on the last word. The video ended on a high-pitched tone that thousands later reported hearing in their heads even when their devices were powered down. The clip vanished from the mainstream as quickly as it had appeared, but copies remained in dark corners, in the hands of those who would not, or could not, let go. From that moment, the problem became not one of proof, but of contagion. If the entities learned through engagement, then the global attention was their teacher. Every repost taught them new ways to adapt. Every analysis, every meme, even the denials, all heightened the signal. Disappearances followed. Families reported empty houses where a loved one had simply evaporated, leaving scorch marks and puzzling circular symbols etched into the soil. Search parties found only noise, a low hum in the ground that made compass needles twitch. Anonymous military personnel leaked accounts of overnight operations, retrievals of anomalies, scrape marks on the desert floor, dead electronics. In the vacuum of information, rumor bred more rumor. Black vans were working the outskirts, citizens were being detained, and whole districts were cordoned off for reasons no press release would explain. And then, the broadcast again. This time, the image was widespread. It moved across continents like a satellite passing overhead. Not a transmission hosted, but an intrusion. Thousands reported their screens flickering with the same geometry, the same spirals and three-armed shapes analysts had seen in the spectrograms. Wherever the symbol appeared, people reported similar sensations: nausea, vertigo, the feeling of being seen by an intelligence that did not judge, but that simply catalogued. After the second broadcast, containment became a fantasy. Borders meant little against a signal. The world had answered. We had watched. We had clicked. The invitation had been accepted, not by an individual, but by a species wired to watch. There are many ways to process fear. We look for villains to prosecute, for agencies to blame, for conspiracies to explain what cannot be explained. But some questions resist neat closures. If these organisms are indeed communicative, if they are probes or sentinels or emergent systems, then the more pressing question is less about origin and more about consequence. What happens when a system built to observe also becomes the means of transformation? This is where the story stops being a neat arc and becomes instead an open wound. The man who filmed in Panama and then in Las Vegas, the one who vanished and then returned to record from a concrete room, disappeared again. His last message before silence was not a warning so much as an indictment. "Permission," he said. "We gave them permission. We cannot unsee what we've seen. The flicker is embedded in memory. The echoes of the hum travel through headphone cords and quiet rooms. In Las Vegas, the Strip still lights up at night, as hospitable to spectacle as ever. But now, beneath the neon, people walk with something else. A new kind of knowledge that the ground itself can be a threshold, that seeing is no longer neutral, that an image can be an opening. The last act in this chapter is a question rather than a resolution. If the organisms are teaching themselves through our attention, what will we teach them next? What will they become when they learn the cadence of our fears, the shape of our scrolls, the speed of our shares? When a species that has always relied on the transmission of data learns to read the human nervous system, when it adapts to feeds and formats and the rhythms of viral attention, what comes after watching? The screen cuts to black. The clip ends. For a long while, the internet is quiet. Only the residual hum remains. And then, in living rooms and basements, and on phones that won't stop buzzing, screens begin to flicker again. They are not waiting anymore. They are here.